Have you ever been in a situation and you had to say to someone,
you had one job to do?
You don't want to give them too much to do because you don't want them to mess it up. You just want them to do this one single thing and this one single thing well. I'm sure that we all have had to say something like that to someone at one time or another. This brings us to the very first principle we're going to talk about, the single responsibility principle. Let's get right into it. So this is the definition of the single responsibility principle. A class should only have one reason to change. When we talk about a reason to change, that means that inside of a class, if it's doing more than one thing, then it's doing too much. A reason to change is tied to a responsibility or role that a class fulfills. If a class has more than one reason to change, it means it's doing more than one job and should be split into multiple classes. Each responsibility should be encapsulated into a separate class. Let's say you have a class that's going to log an entry inside of a database, save a record inside of a table inside of a database. And then you're going to also have another method or function inside that same class that also sends an email. Essentially, this class is doing two responsibilities. The first responsibility is saving a record inside of a database table. The second responsibility is that it is also sending an email. This violates the single responsibility principle. Essentially, what the single responsibility principle says is that the functionality or the responsibility of logging or updating a record in the database should be in its own separate class. Likewise, the responsibility of sending an email should be in its separate class as well. Let's look at an example. When we look at this C# class called report, you can see that it has two methods, one that generates a report and one that saves to a file. This violates the single responsibility principle because this class has two responsibilities, one for generating a report and one for saving to a file. Now, let's look at a better implementation. This right here is a better implementation for both of the responsibilities, one for generating a report and for saving to a file. We see that the method save to a file is in its own separate class called report saver, and we see that the method generate report is in its own class called report. So now that we've looked at a couple examples, why is this important? This is important because when you follow the single responsibility principle, it makes your code easier to understand. It makes your code easier to explain. If another developer comes and they're looking at your code, which often happens a lot in an organization, someone else has to look at your code. Hey, you want them to be able to quickly understand what you were intending to do. One of the worst things you can do is to have a God class. A God class is a class that, it does everything. It's the ultimate class. Nah. You want to have simple classes that are easy to understand and that are easy to maintain. In addition, when you have to make changes, it's easier to pinpoint where you actually need to make the change in your code. Also, it's going to be easier to test because once you make a change, if you have to, you're going to know that unrelated features are not going to be affected. All right, guys, so I hope that this video concerning the single responsibility principle is helpful and one that you start applying to your code today. I want to encourage you, hey, follow this very first principle in the solid design principles, the single responsibility principle, and it will make you a better developer. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Blessings.